Mr. Chairman. Mr. Secretary, you and I agree that Iran is a national security threat to us and our allies. Now, earlier you called us feckless for questioning your war. Do you think Congress was smart or feckless when it failed to ask tough questions of the Bush administration and gave them a blank check for Iraq?
Well, if you're trying to compare this war to the Iraq
I'm just asking you,
war,
do you think it was
smart
smart or
the first
feckless?
one to call a stupid war, then it's a false comparison.
Okay, well, probably a good idea to ask tough questions. So let me just ask you a few questions. Did you advise the president that we should attack Iran?
We were, first of all, in this position in the cabinet, we never talk about what we would advise the president to do or not.
Do you think the president or you deserve more?
I've been in every meeting.
I understand
with
that,
the
Mr.
chairman and
Secretary.
everybody else as those
Secretary,
critical
I'm asking
decisions
the
were
questions.
made, and he got every perspective possible when it came.
I'm
to
just
making
asking what your perspective is. Are you afraid to take ownership of this? Do you think it was a good idea or not?
As I've consulted the president, do I think it's a good idea to confront a nuclear bomb
To start this
in the
war.
hands of the? Imagine what the world would look like right now if Iran had a nuclear weapon.
Okay, so let's
Just imagine.
Which, by the way,
if
every
they
other,
had one,
every
which the
previous
Obama deal
administration,
was going to allow them
including
to do.
the first Trump administration,
they had one.
prevented them from having a nuclear weapon. So, listen, how is this war going? Do you think we're winning?
Militarily on the battlefield, it's been an astounding military success.
No, but are we winning the war?
Absolutely.
Okay, so do you call Iran closing the Strait of Hormuz winning?
Well, I would say the blockade that we hold that doesn't allow anything to come in or out of Iranian ports, which
Okay,
is
so
always
we've blockaded their
portfolio to
blockade. So
use.
they blockaded us, and then we blockaded their blockade. That's like saying, tag, you're it. Or, you know, if President Madison had said, well, the British just burned down Washington, but don't worry, we're going to burn it down as well. Chairman Kaine, did the military have plans for the idea that Iran might blockade the Strait?
Sir, thanks for the question. I'll answer it this way. You know, in this job, I have to maintain trust with a variety of constituents. To
Okay, I'm
include
just
the president.
asking if the military
Yes,
had
sir.
plans.
As always, my point in this is, as I explain the role, my point in this is we always offer a full range of military options that are carefully considered, with the associated risks with those options and the considerations therein.
So, Mr. Secretary, did you consider this risk?
Of course, this department has looked at all aspects of this risk. And
So then
because
why did you
this
send the
department looks,
minesweepers, the only minesweepers we had in the Gulf, to Singapore weeks before the war started?
we have lots of capabilities that you may or may not be aware of at the classified level.
Okay, and
to deal
so,
with, to deal with
by the way, would
mines.
the
And
Trump-class battleships have helped with this?
You're talking about a
Minesweeping.
prospective future battleship, which we welcome in the fleet.
Okay, so you're supportive of the battleships.
Yes, sir.
Okay. How much has Iran profited from your administration lifting the sanctions on Iran when you started this war?
I can tell you Iran is financially devastated right now.
Okay, well,
in conjunction with the
they've
Treasury
earned about
and
$14 billion.
Operation Economic Fury. They're at a point where between the blockade and what we've done to them militarily, remember, they don't have a Navy. They can't contest the blockade.
Okay.
Between what we've done to them
What kind of
militarily
a
and
Navy can
financially,
they buy
they're at a
for
place
$14 billion?
where they have very few options.
How many Chinese missiles can they buy for $14 billion? Does that sound like winning?
They're not. We're ensuring, and they're not buying Chinese missiles.
Okay. You know, at the end of the day, this also has a cost to us. If let's say this war costs $100 billion, I mean, you've already said, give us more time. It's only been 2 months. It could go on for 20 years like Iraq and Afghanistan. Let's just say it costs $100 billion. What is that to the average American taxpayer? Do you have any idea?
Well, unlike foolish previous administrations, it won't go on.
No, I'm just asking.
For years and decades.
But let's just say it's
sitting in this
$100 billion.
position, it's hard to imagine how
You know
it was
that?
allowed those things to happen. You were a part of
You know
that
the
war.
answer to that?
So was I. I never.
I'm
knew
just
what the
asking
end
if you
state
know what
clearly was.
your war
Now I
costs
know
the
what the
average
end state
American
is.
taxpayer.
What is the cost of Iran having a nuclear weapon that they wield?
I'm
over
just
us?
asking if you know the cost of the average American
I'm asking
taxpayer.
you what
It's
the
about
cost would be of that.
So for the American taxpayers out there, my constituents, some of the constituents you wanted to represent in Minnesota, I'm just wondering if they have an extra $600 lying around to pay for your war. I think that's just a question that we ought to ask. Now, quickly, on March 13th in a press conference, you said, we will give them no quarter, no mercy. In order for no quarter or no survivors is a war crime under the Geneva Conventions. You understand that's murder. Do you stand by that statement?
The Department of War fights to win, and we ensure that our warfighters have the rules of engagement necessary to be as
Okay,
effective
so
as
just to
humanly
be clear,
possible,
you
which
called
they are.
Democratic members of Congress to be tried for sedition for reminding our troops to follow the law. But when you tell them to commit a war crime, you stand by yourself.
For insinuating that the
Congratulations,
laws
Mr.
that we're giving
Secretary.
them are
Gentleman's
unlawful.
time's
This hearing was not simply about Iran. It was about the weight of wartime decision-making, the memory of past conflicts, and whether American leaders had truly learned anything from the wars that reshaped an entire generation of U.S. foreign policy. Representative Seth Moulton entered the exchange with a very specific strategy. Before discussing military operations, sanctions, or battlefield outcomes, he anchored the conversation in history, specifically Iraq. That framing mattered immediately. Moulton's first major question was not whether Iran posed a threat. In fact, he explicitly acknowledged that Iran represented a national security concern to both the United States and its allies. Instead, he asked something more politically dangerous. Was Congress feckless for failing to challenge the Bush administration before the Iraq War? That question carried enormous historical baggage because it touched one of the deepest institutional scars in modern American politics: bipartisan support for a war that later became associated with flawed intelligence, massive financial cost, prolonged instability, and thousands of deaths. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth immediately rejected the comparison. But the comparison itself was not accidental. Moulton, a Marine veteran who served in Iraq, appeared to be building a broader argument about oversight. His position seemed to be that asking difficult questions before and during military conflict is not weakness, it is precisely the responsibility Congress failed to fulfill in earlier wars. That theme ran through the entire exchange. Again and again, Moulton attempted to force direct ownership of the administration's strategic decisions. Did Hegseth advise the president to attack Iran? Was the war actually succeeding? Had the administration fully considered the consequences of escalation in the Strait of Hormuz? Hegseth consistently responded from the perspective of executive authority and operational confidence. He emphasized military success, strategic preparedness, and Iran's weakened position. But Moulton kept redirecting the discussion toward cost. Not just military cost, economic and historical cost. At one point, he reduced the potential financial burden of the war into a direct number ordinary Americans could understand: approximately $600 per taxpayer if the conflict ultimately reached $100 billion. That moment was politically important because it transformed an abstract geopolitical conflict into something personal and domestic. Wars are often discussed in strategic language: deterrence, force projection, regional stability, escalation control. Moulton translated it into household economics. Can ordinary Americans afford another open-ended war? That question echoed repeatedly beneath the surface of the hearing. The exchange also revealed a deeper philosophical divide about how wartime leadership communicates with the public. Hegseth framed the conflict in terms of strength, resolve, and preventing Iran from obtaining nuclear weapons. Moulton framed it through skepticism born from experience, the fear that certainty at the beginning of wars often looks very different years later. And then the hearing took an even sharper turn. Near the end of the exchange, Moulton referenced a March 13 statement in which Hegseth reportedly used the phrase "no quarter, no mercy." That phrase carries significant historical and legal implications. Under the modern laws of armed conflict, declaring no quarter is associated with refusing surrender and denying protections to combatants attempting to lay down arms. International humanitarian law prohibits such conduct because it removes one of the core restraints designed to limit wartime atrocities. Moulton's point was not merely rhetorical. He was questioning whether language used by senior civilian defense leadership could create ambiguity about lawful military conduct. That distinction is critical. Military organizations operate through chains of command, doctrine, and interpretation. Public statements from senior officials are not treated the same way as campaign slogans or television commentary. Service members understand that leadership language can influence operational culture, even when no formal order is issued. Hegseth did not directly retract the statement during the hearing. Instead, he pivoted toward a broader defense of military effectiveness and rules of engagement. Moulton responded by raising another sensitive issue: whether political leaders who criticize discussions about lawful conduct are inadvertently discouraging troops from understanding the legal boundaries governing warfare. This is where the hearing became larger than partisan conflict. At its core, the exchange was about a question every democracy faces during wartime. How does a nation balance aggressive military posture with the legal and ethical constraints designed to govern the use of force? That tension is not new. The United States has wrestled with it through Vietnam, Iraq, Afghanistan, counterterrorism operations, and debates over detention, interrogation, and civilian casualties. What made this hearing notable was how directly those tensions surfaced inside a public congressional exchange. Moulton's argument appeared rooted in institutional memory. Wars can expand, confidence can outpace reality, and rhetoric from leadership matters. Hegseth's argument appeared rooted in deterrence and decisiveness. Enemies must fear American strength, military pressure works, and hesitation can create greater danger. Neither perspective exists in isolation inside American history. Both have shaped U.S. foreign policy for decades. But what this hearing exposed was the growing divide over whether the lessons of past wars are actually informing present decisions, or simply repeating themselves under new circumstances. And that may be the real significance of this exchange. Because long after tactical victories, sanctions, and congressional hearings fade from the headlines, the larger question remains. How should democratic governments scrutinize military power before temporary wars become permanent ones? What do you think? Should Congress aggressively challenge military action in real time, even during active conflict, or does that risk undermining national unity and deterrence? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. And if you value detailed breakdowns of congressional hearings, defense policy, and the power struggles shaping modern government, subscribe to Capital Oversight for more long-form analysis and oversight coverage.